Bleach is back after 10 years for the 1000 Years Blood War. Without further ado, let's dive into our breakdown and explanation of the first episode. It begins with a very important narrative that actually doesn't occur in the manga until much later in the story. But don't worry, this video has no spoilers. In a way though, the anime itself has already revealed things with this little sequence. Anyway, we see blue sparkling particles and hear someone talking about the sealed Quincy King. The actual quote in the manga goes like this: "The sealed Quincy King, in 900 years he shall regain his heartbeat. In 90 years he shall regain his intellect. In 9 years he shall regain his power, and that's when the anime decided they had spoiled enough. Obviously, I'm not going to finish the quote either. However, it's pretty obvious that it has something to do with the unit of time and the number 9. Simply because of the continuation of the logic of the sentence: 9 months, 9 days, 9 hours, 9 minutes, 9 seconds. One of them makes the most sense. And of course, followed by something that has already happened or will happen. Then we see a hand emerging from the dark background and reaching for the Quincy cross, the symbol that stands for the Quincy's power. However you want to interpret this, it's bad news. Either something is going to happen to the Quincy's or the Quincy's are going to do something. The scene ends with a man who is obviously the same person who grabbed the Quincy cross and who also appears a little later in the episode, the king of all Quincy's. We then switch to the Soul Society Research and Development Department where an alarm sounds. We have a total state of emergency. We see Captain Mayuri and the Vice President of this department, Akon, heading to the control room where they were then immediately informed of the situation, and it looks bad. Hollows began to disappear from the living world. The moment they arrived in the control room, 112 more hollows disappeared. Just like that. And this is only in one region. This happens in all regions. Thousands of hollows. In case you're wondering why this is a problem, aren't hollows the bad guys? Isn't it a good thing that makes the work of Soul Reapers easier, isn't it? Well, not really. It's actually a big problem. Soul Reapers are often called balancers, because in Soul Society and in the world of the living, there must always be an equal number of souls. Otherwise, the balance of the two worlds shifts. This brings destruction to both. And that's where the Shinigamis, that is, the Soul Reapers, come into play. It is their task to regulate the number of souls in the two worlds. By entrusting the Soul Reapers with the transfer of all souls, the Soul Society can monitor the number of souls to maintain the balance between the two worlds. This is what we see in the control room. But one day the Quincy showed up and completely destroyed the hollows alongside the souls, instead of continuing to use their souls. So these souls do not return to the Soul Society, and this creates an imbalance between the souls in the Soul Society and in the living world. As a result, the whole universe tilts and the Soul Society begins to fall into the world of the living. Life and death mix. This creates chaos. In a nutshell, this will mean the collapse of the universe, the end of everything. If you remember, this was the reason why the war against the Quincy's happened in the first place, and the reason why all the Quincy's were wiped out. At least that's what was claimed. Obviously, we see here that Quincy's clearly survived and somehow now seem to be the villains. After the war, only the Soul Reapers remained as the sole guardians of the balance between life and death. But they can only do so much. When hollows start disappearing just like that, they have to eliminate the cause. But what is the cause? What is happening? Captain Mayuri immediately understands who is capable of erasing the hollows. Only the Quincy's. And of course, Mayuri knows the Quincy's better than anyone. After all, he was part of the war, and not only that. He has dissected the dead Quincy's and studied them to the core. The setting changes to the city of Karakura with a mysterious person wearing a Quincy cross with white clothes that are usually associated with Quincy's. Obviously, this is a Quincy. This person breaks something just before he jumps away as the gate to the Soul Society opens. It wasn't explained what he broke, but according to the current situation in the Soul Society, with the disappearance of several hollows and the knowledge that only the Quincy's are capable of doing this moment reminds me a lot of what Uryu did at the beginning of Bleach, when he made a bet with Ichigo to see who could get rid of the most hollows. He was holding a hollow bait that once broken will cause the hollows to pounce on the city of Karakura. That's what Quincy used to do to quickly eliminate many hollows. So I think that's the case here as well, and a hollow bait was broken. The two new Soul Reapers have decided to split up and patrol separately, covering a larger part of the city at the same time. We follow Yuki, who is immediately confronted with a hollow. And of course, as befits a good Soul Reaper, Yuki decides to run away instead of fighting the hollow. He arrives on a rooftop where he finds his friend and partner Shino, who we saw with him at the beginning of the scene. She's not in the best condition. More and more hollows show up, which fits with what we explained with the Quincy hollow bait. I think that pretty much proves what we said. Just before the end of our young new Soul Reaper, reinforcements suddenly show up. And it's the gang, Chad, Orihime, Uryu and Ichigo. They save the day as always. The scene then cuts to Yuki waking up in Ichigo's room a day later. Everything is fine, even the second Soul Reaper rookie has survived and is already on 2 legs. They are enjoying the day until something very strange happens. Without anyone seeing it coming, a mysterious figure in white clothes and a half mask flies through the open window and positions himself on Ichigo's bed. He introduces himself as Guiaro Aburn. Ichigo asks him to move away from his bed, but he refuses, whereupon Ichigo kicks him in the face, throwing him out of the window. They suspect that the half mask might mean that he could be an Arrancars. For those of you who don't remember what that means, an Arrancars is a hollow that has removed its mask and gained Shinigami-like powers. And so Ichigo decides to investigate further as it slowly zooms in on Uryu, suggesting that he might know more. Obviously because he's a Quincy himself, only an idiot Quincy wouldn't recognize another Quincy wearing those fancy clothes standing right in front of him. Very strange why he didn't suggest that, but it's kind of understandable because from what we know from the anime so far, he thinks he and his father are the only surviving Quincy's. But who knows, maybe he knows more, something he hasn't revealed yet. The scene changes to Ichigo, who comes to talk to Aburn. After a little chat, Ichigo asks him if he is an Arrancars. This question seems to have infuriated Aburn. We know that the Quincy's are a very proud group of people, and so it makes sense that Aburn might feel insulted by basically being called a hollow, the creature that the Quincy's live to kill. He flies up and ready to fight Ichigo. He then pulls out a Quincy cross, which Ichigo recognizes. Immediately, Aburn manifests a strange weapon using this cross. The Quincy cross normally serves as a source for a Quincy bow, but the cross doesn't necessarily have to take the form of a bow. And this is a perfect example of that rule. It doesn't look like a bow, but it is nonetheless. Before the battle begins, the scene cuts to the Rukan district in Soul Society, where Ayasegawa and Madarame are investigating the disappearance of an entire village. The subordinates have searched the entire area and found only one thing, a series of strange footprints that all came together in one place and then just stopped there. They believe that this was not the work of a hollow, but suspect that the residents of Rukan district themselves have kidnapped their own people. Very strange. Back to the research and development control room, where we see a series of red areas indicating that the same situation is occurring in several places at once. And the scene immediately changes again to the office of Captain Commander Yamamoto. Suddenly, a flash of light comes from outside. Yamamoto realizes that it is Sasaki's Bankai, which is something very unusual. Shinigamis only use their Bankai when they are involved in a serious fight. And given what happens next, it's safe to say that Soul Society is under attack. But before he can investigate further, he is confronted by a group of mysterious people, all wearing those fancy white clothes. Of course, they must be Quincy's. They say they are here to declare war. Suddenly, Sasaki, who has just released his Bankai, is thrown into the office, confirming the idea that Soul Society is under attack by the Quincy's. They give Yamamoto to understand that this will be the fate of all his people. In 5 days, the Soul Society will be destroyed by the Wandenreich. The word Reich is German and means something like empire, so we can assume that Wandenreich is a place or dimension where the Quincy's live. And this place is now officially at war with Soul Society. Without revealing who they are, they tell Yamamoto that he should already know who they are. Yamamoto attacks, but before he can hit them, they disappear and dive into the shadows. Very interesting how these people can just come and go whenever they want and wherever they want, just by using this mysterious shadow, whether it's Soul Society, the Wandenreich, or the world of the living. And who knows where else they can show up. Fortunately, Sasaki survived and has very important information. The enemy is able to make the Bankai disappear somehow. In the meantime, Ichigo has already started his fight against Aburn. He understands that the item Aburn used came from the Quincy's, but he's confused as to why he's wearing a mask so typical for Arrancars, which in itself makes no sense because the Quincy's actually hate hollows, so there's something really strange going on. The fight continues with a back and forth. Aburn is clearly provoking Ichigo to use his Bankai, and we know why, but Ichigo does him the favor and activates his Tensa Zangetsu. At the same time, Aburn takes a strange device that creates a blue ring around him. A series of blue energy blades shoot from the sky and rain down on Ichigo, while Aburn starts speaking German for some reason.
Ich liebe dich, Schatz, so sehr.
Fun fact, the Hollows are associated with the Spanish language and the Quincy's with the German language, while the Soul Reapers are associated with the Japanese language. Luckily I can speak German, so let me translate whatever he says. The funny thing is that some of the words he says don't even exist, so let me try to interpret it correctly somehow. Sea to cloud, cloud to rain, rain to fog. That with shape to that which is invisible. After our celebration the cup is turned. Something like that, with my interpretation of course, cause that German makes absolutely no sense, trust me. After that awful German lesson, something that looks like Ichigo's full bring starts to crack, but Ichigo just breaks through, leaving Aburn shocked because he didn't expect such a thing to be possible. As we know, Ichigo is always the exception among Soul Reapers. Obviously what happened to Sasaki in Soul Society does not apply to the main character, it's a shonen, duh. Ichigo finishes his release and with it the fight. Before Aburn can reveal anything however, he disappears into those mysterious shadows that has also engulfed the group of intruders in the Soul Society before they could be attacked by Yamamoto. Aburn informs Ichigo that this shadow only hides the chosen ones. So there's something mysterious about these shadows. It's a type of power that can only be used by certain people. Obviously by Quincy's, but with certain other requirements. Otherwise we would have seen Uryu already using this shadow. Let's see. Last change of location for this episode, which brings us back to the beginning. The strange blue light we saw in the first few seconds can now be confirmed with certainty as the Wandenreich, the place where the Quincy's have made their home, so to speak. We see the group that attacked Soul Society arrive, with their leader having removed his mask. He makes fun of Aburn for being on his knees, but then loses his arm, which was chopped off by the leader and king of the Quincy's because of this disrespect. The same person we saw at the beginning of this episode. The end. This Bleach episode is an amazing start to the final story arc. The 1000-year Blood War had finally begun. Let me know in the comments what you think of this review, breakdown, recap, explanation, call it whatever you want. And also let me know what you think of the new Bleach episodes. Comment and like, and if you want to see more Bleach content, subscribe to our channel with the notification bell activated. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.